Okay, so today what we're going to be looking at is how to create a double exposure video inside of Photoshop. So we're actually going to play with video this time inside of Photoshop. I thought in these reviews it might be a good time to show you something a little bit more advanced, something we don't have enough time to in a normal class kind of cover. And I want you to take this and kind of run with it. I'm going to have files that you can download in the Canvas course today, but if you want to use your own images, this would go a lot better. So if you find a picture of yourself kind of at a side angle and you want to use that for this assignment, feel free to use it, because I think at the end of the day that would only make this that much cooler and that much more something you can use, which is what I'm all about anyway. So we're going to create a double exposure video where you have a little bit of your face visible and there'll be a video kind of running through it. Now, Photoshop's not necessarily known for editing video. You hear people say, I'm going to Photoshop that all the time. It does have the capability to edit video, but it's not the main program to do that with. The main program that you'd be looking at would be Adobe Premiere, and that's in my video class. So if you move on to Adobe Video Design, that's the class that I teach. That's the class you'll be learning all kinds of cool stuff in video. In that we create music videos, commercials, intro videos, horror films, real films. It's something that we can do and kind of experiment with together, that class. So if that's something you're into, make sure you look into that. There's also Adobe Digital Design that allows you to build websites and apps and different things like that. So all of this kind of bleeds in from Photoshop and Illustrator. You need the graphics from these programs in your videos, in your websites, in order for them to be successful. So let's start looking at what we're going to create today. I need you to have Photoshop open, and we're going to start kind of playing around with what we have. I've given you today a side angle image and a video that says the most oddly satisfying. Download both of those for me if you will. And that side angle, take that into Photoshop. So open that side angle into Photoshop. You can hit File, Open here, and go to your Downloads, and there's your side angle. Alright, so this is the image we're going to be using. Again, if you want to use your own image, please do. This side angle is all you really need. Take an image of yourself from the side. It'll look just as good as you want it to. Alright, so let's first unlock this layer and call this image. This is the image we're going to be working on. And I'm going to turn this image black and white to start with. So I'm going to go to my hue and saturation, and I'm just going to drop off my saturation for a time. Make sure you link this down. Okay. So we're going to have to first make a selection of this woman. We can use the object selection tool or the quick selection tool, whichever kind of floats your boat. I'll do a quick object select just to get the basic lines and come through with the quick selection and clean this up. There are some areas on her that are going to be a little bit more difficult to select because they match the background pretty closely. Watch the hair. I don't need all of it, but I do want a good chunk of the hair. Check the shoulders. We're going to make sure all that's good. The back of this hair creates kind of a mess because it's all very much the same color as the background, which makes it that much harder for the quick selection tool to select. And then the top of the head, there's a glare on the top of her hair. We want to make sure we get that. Now once we have a basic selection of her, I'm going to go up to the top to where it says select and mask. And before I do this, I want to tell you that some computers tend to crash doing this. So if you can't do this step, that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab the second tool, which I believe is called the photo refining tool. And I'm going to kind of push up or down my transparency as needed so that I don't see as much of the background. And I'm just going to use this tool to kind of drag over the back of this hair. It should make a slightly better selection. You won't see a whole lot changing here, but it will. When you hit OK, you can see it's a lot more kind of slapdash on this selection, and it's a little cleaner in general. Make sure you're on the image, excuse me, that's what was going on there. So select and mask, and just kind of drag over that hair. It should become a lot more visible as you do it. If you push that transparency down, you can see exactly what you're going to have at the end of this, and you can kind of play around with that hair a little bit so that you get the best selection you can get. I also tend to shift the edge in just a little bit, just to make it a little cleaner. Alright, so that's my selection of the girl here. Clean this nose up. And what I'm going to do is create a layer mask on her like this. Okay, so now all I have is the girl, and I have a transparent background. I'm going to go to the bottom to my adjustment layers, and I'm going to choose solid color, and I'm going to change this color to a color that I like. It doesn't matter what color you pick. I would pick a lighter color in general, but it's kind of up to you. Make sure that layer is on the bottom, so it's underneath the image of the girl. That's key. Alright, so I'm going to duplicate this image layer, holding Option or Alt. I'm just going to drag it up to create another version of it. That way I've got two in total. It's going to drag up that layer mask with it, so it should still be cut out if all goes right. I'll also grab that hue and saturation and duplicate it up as well, making sure to link it back down. So if everything goes away, make sure you've linked it. Alright, so here's where the fun of it begins. We need to get this most oddly satisfying image in here. Now to do that, I'm going to grab this image or this video, and I'm just going to drag it straight to Photoshop like that. It's going to take a minute to process because this is a video. There's a lot more here. When it comes in, you'll hit this little check mark at the top, and that'll put that video inside of your selection. If you look at your layers, you'll see that it's a smart object now, meaning there's more information here. It's just inside of this image. Currently nothing's running. You don't see a video here, but this is a video. Alright, so I'm going to move this down to just above the hue saturation and just below the top image. Okay, that video is going to need to have the same layer mask that these two have on it. So I'm going to click on this layer mask. I'm going to hold Option or Alt, and I'm going to drag just the layer mask down to the video. So you see the video has the same basic principle going on here. Now with the layer mask selected on the girl, the top layer, I'm going to start using my brush and a black brush at that to kind of fade in some of this area. So I'm going to choose a 0% hardness brush, not too large. And the area that I really want to focus on, in fact I'll drop the opacity down a bit. The area I really want to focus on and I want the video in is that hair. So I'm going to kind of fade this back so that I'm seeing more of that video in the hair. I'll leave a couple little strands to kind of create some interest in there. And I'll do the same thing with the hoodie down here, just creating a little bit of a layer mask in it. I'll drop the opacity down way down, and I'll just kind of bring a little bit of that video into her face too. I want to leave the main line of her face, the eyes kind of down to the mouth, visual so I can see it, because I don't want to overwhelm this either. And in fact, if I feel like I've got too much in there, I can always flip it to white and kind of draw in a little bit more. Alright, so this gives me the video in place where I want it to be. Now the real trick to this is under the timeline. So I need to hit Window, Timeline, and you'll see this timeline pop up at the bottom. We need to hit this option that says Create Video Timeline, and we'll see that it makes a nice little selection for your video. Now let's really kind of dig into what this is. Each layer now has its own spot here. Each layer now has its own video file. The hue and saturation is a video. The image is a video. All of it is a video. But the only one that has moving frames is that most oddly satisfying time-lapse video. So I'm going to shorten all these. I'm going to grab the end and I'm going to drag them in. I want them all to be the same size. And down here I can kind of make them bigger once I have it at that right size so I can see what's what. Alright, so I'm going to move this down just a little bit. And I want to edit what's where. And in fact, now that you've got it, you can hit play and you can actually see it running in the head. So that's pretty cool, right? What we're going to do is we're going to put a specific part of the video in the hair. This is a pretty long video and there's a bunch of scenes in it. Pick whichever one you like the most. So I'm going to go to my layers and I'm going to look for that smart object. That's that one with the little file underneath there, the video. And I'm going to double click on this thumbnail. 1, 2. I'll hit OK. And this is the video that is playing in that hair. Now as you can see, there are a whole host of scenes here. I want you to pick whichever one kind of floats your boat, whichever one looks the coolest to you. Okay? So when I find it, let's see, what do I like here? Kind of like this stormy city here. So when I like it, I'm going to put my playhead, which is this red line, on that spot. And I'm going to shorten this front half up to match. And then I'm going to go downstream a little bit to the end of that video. And I'm going to shrink this down. I'll move that to the front. So this is all I get for this video. Okay. In fact, I'm going to cut a little bit more off because I believe it's only about 5 seconds that we're working for. So I'm going to cut a little bit of this off. I'm going to go to about there, maybe a little longer. Alright. Now, the real trick here is coming up to this tab, because remember this is a smart object, and smart objects are files in files. So we've got the inside file opened here. When I exit out of this and save, it's going to save that part of the video. So now what I want in that spot. Now the real trick again is kind of tinkering and playing with this. So as you see, I've got this main building here and it's covered by hair, so that's not going to work for me. So I'm going to grab this video and I'm going to unlink these two things, the video and the layer mask. And that will allow me to get my move tool and make sure I've got auto select off. That will allow me to move that video inside of that head as best I want to. So that creates a pretty cool effect in itself. And if I play now, I can see that it runs through and it keeps that where I want it to be. Alright, so experimenting again. I'm going to duplicate this video layer. You can use Command J or Control J. That'll duplicate it as well. And we want to make sure that it's not getting pushed way to the side. You saw how mine just shot over to the right. Now I'm going to take one of these two, either one, and I'm going to move it down to just above the color fill. And I'm also going to drag that layer mask to the trash can so that it goes away. I'm going to use the same tools in Photoshop that I've used before. I'm going to hit Command T, and I'll need to zoom out just a hair. And I'm going to make this video bigger. Alright. Now that it's bigger, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a black and white video in the background that's just going to kind of run. So in my adjustment layers, I'll look for black and white. And I'll link that down in the properties. If I don't see it, I can always hold Option between these two layers to link them down. I'm also going to find the Gaussian blur. So I'm going to choose Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur. And I'm going to leave it at about 9 pixels, somewhere in there, 9 to 8 pixels. I need to be on the right image, excuse me. So again, Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur. And you should see that background start to blur out. Last, I'll drop the opacity down a little bit so it kind of bleeds in with that background color. And that gives me a pretty cool look. Again, make sure all your videos are kind of lined up to the right length so they're all the same size. Good Lord, that's so loud. Pause. So now, if I hit but also in this can change the color fill. I just need to double click on it, and I can alter that to any color I want that background image to be. So if I wanted a little pinker, a little green, a little yellow, orange, I can add that color to it. And you can always drop your opacity down on the video a little more or a little less to create the look that you're trying to create. I mean, it's up to you at this point what this looks like. The last thing I want you to do is take your type tool, click on here, and I want you to write your name. Now, if you're using an image of yourself here, and you type this name out like this is going to be an awesome little video for you to have, for you to use in whatever place you want to use it. Think about it. I mean, this would look awesome on Instagram, Snapchat, all that. So that's what it's going to look like. And I'm going to make sure it stretches the whole length of the video. So we'll shrink everything down and move things into place. You do have the ability, if you want, to fade. So right here, you can see crossfades, fade to black, whatever. You can put those right at the beginning and end of your clips, so that right here you'll see that we'll go through the wastelands, through the highway. All kinds of neat things that you can create inside Photoshop. This is just a sample. This is just an example of what you can do with video and some of the styles and things that you can do with that video editing. Inside of Premiere, this is child's play. This is easy stuff here. The complicated stuff comes when I've got people walking in on each other, when you're going to be looking like triplets, 3 of you talking to each other and carrying a conversation, where you're going to cut yourself out and make yourself look like Superman flying through the air. There's all kinds of stuff we can do. It's up to you. Your imagination is the limit. That's it. Now, if you like this, if you've got this done, I need to create one of 2 files. You can turn either one into me. I need either a GIF or an MP4. So if you're creating a GIF, you can use that on almost any form of social media, right? Instagram doesn't like MP4s, so you might have to create a GIF if you want it to get on Instagram. So let's go to File, Export, and then Save for Web. This automatic setup is going to be into a GIF. It's going to take a little while to kind of process. You'll see this blue bar down here taking forever. Most everything right here should be fine and should be the same. When this is done, it's probably going to say somewhere in the line of like 50 megabytes over here in the corner, maybe a little bigger or smaller, depending on what you did. If you want that file size to be smaller, because that is a pretty big file, this is set in 1080. Yeah, mine's at 37 megabytes. So this is set at 1080. You can always drop this down to 720, and it'll automatically link that for you. And it should decrease your file size pretty heavily. You could of course drop even lower than that. It's up to you how you want to play it. Now, when everything's processed, and again, video takes time to process. You can't just snap a finger and all your effects are there. When it's done processing, you'll hit save right here and make sure you save it to your desktop or somewhere where you can find it. If you do that correctly, you can turn that GIF in just like that to me. It'll be a little 5-6 second GIF, your name, awesome effect, play with it as how you will. Yeah, you see just that dropped it almost half in size. So save to your desktop, call it whatever you would like. In fact, let's call it your name. So trip PS review. It's great spelling. Alright, so save that to your desktop so you can find it. Okay, so when that's done processing, we're gonna save an MP4. Now an MP4 you've heard of before, I'm sure. MP4s are the most compressed video file you can find. So that means that when you create a video, you have all these frames that go into it. The smaller you can make each frame, the faster everything's gonna load. So you want something that's gonna load quickly. So let's go to File, Export, and we want to go to Render Video. Now right here, it's going to give you an option to name. Don't delete that .mp4. Call it your name dash PS review. It's not really review, but we'll call it what it is. Select folder. Make sure you're saving it to your desktop or somewhere you can find it. I really don't care as long as you can find it. H.264 is actually the format for MP4, so make sure it is at H.264, not QuickTime. That's a .mov file. And everything else should be able to leave the same. So when you hit render here, it's going to take a moment to kind of render and export this video. Now when you shrink down out of Photoshop, you should be able to go to your desktop, find that MP4, double click on it, and actually watch it run. Again, this looks way better if you pick an image of yourself. And in fact, if you followed along with me here, the only thing you need to do to create this to look like you is just replace these two images. So if you delete these two images and make a mask of yourself and fix the mask in the hair or wherever you're trying to see the video, you're good to roll. So consider this a template. Alright, so now if I hit on this review, name fade in and out. You can create all kinds of cool things like this in Photoshop. Now if you've got that, you should have a GIF and an MP4. If you want to put both in today's assignment, that's fine. I just need one of them, to be honest with you. Make sure you've written your name on it. I'm not taking it if you didn't write your name on it, and you should be good to go. Alright, so if you like this lesson, that's awesome. Again, Photoshop does so many things that I don't have the ability or the time to kind of cover in the class. We have to teach 3 programs, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, and there's just too much to really hit on everything that these programs can do. The best way to learn is to experiment, to play around with it for yourself. That's where you really get learning in these programs. Alright, so if you've got this done, thank you, turn that in, and we'll see you in the next lesson. That'd be good.